Hello, and welcome to our podcast extra, where I just want to make one actual correction of something that I said in the last one, where I talked about I dedicated it to Ralph Clemente, so it wasn't just C for Carpenter, but it was C for Clemente as well. And when I was talking about some of his students, I was talking about the guys from the Blair Witch Project, and I talked about Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, but I realized I actually said Rick Hell, where I actually meant Greg Hell. Okay, so apologies. Right. Occasionally I get a name or a date or something wrong when doing these things. It's just the nature of the way the mind goes sometimes. When it's not scripted and it's off the cuff. So apologies for that.
Don't worry about it, because in the last podcast extra, I said James Hofwart when I was supposed to say Alan Hofwart, as in the composer who works with John Carpenter.
Yeah. I mean, we record these things live; they're not rehearsed, and I'm quite bad actually at sometimes making notes of things. I sort of do it off the top of my head, and as a result, it's sometimes how I remember things, or there is the odd fact that's wrong, or date that's wrong, or occasionally a name that's wrong. And as I said, I realized when I heard it back, I was like, oh my God, I meant to say Greg Hale was the student at Valencia College that went on to produce the Blair Witch Project and still producing stuff now. I think VHS he was involved in. I'm sure that he's listening, and he's most upset that I got his name wrong, but has now put it right. So there you go. That's just a little footnote to the last podcast.
Wow, Alan Hofwart is, he's blissfully unaware.
No, absolutely. the other thing, yeah, of course. The other thing I wanted to say actually about Ralph, I know I said loads, and again, it was kind of off the cuff last time, but one of the things I totally failed to mention when I was talking about Ralph was, he was a big one for catchphrases as well, and definitely in his accent, they used to catch on, and he'd always be, much like you said in an earlier podcast about, the industry being about selling yourself and marketing and whatever. He used to say, do the schmooze. He was always about the schmooze and schmoozing and all this. And he used to call the kit shtick and sort of say it was just the technology, but the real creative stuff was more important, and all those sort of things. But his main catchphrase was treat yourself. He always said that. He used to say, treat yourself to this, treat yourself to that. And Nutter, David Nutter, we talked in some length about, does incorporate this in a lot of his TV shows. He'll try and get the line "treat yourself" in there on quite a few of them. I think probably Fox Mulder was the first character to say it, and that's a little homage to Ralph. And I have to say, 4 out of my 6 short films feature the line "treat yourself." If it's appropriate and it's not too winky or distracting, and it's appropriate to the story, I do like to try and throw those little Easter eggs in there. So treat yourself, Ralph. Hopefully he's treating himself now up in the big studio in the sky, I hope.
Yeah. Wow. I'll have to go back and watch your films now just for that, to see if, what characters say that. It is like a nice little Easter egg that you get with some directors, especially like Landis with See You Next Wednesday.
Exactly. And Michael Mann's got what's his one? I should know this. Being a man,
he has loads of ones. He has like always somebody standing in front of the sea.
Yeah, there is a saying. Right. It will come to me. See, God, this is what I mean about forgetting and getting things wrong. I've totally ballsed that up already. So there you go. But so I do try and throw them in if they're not too distracting. Obviously, it was very difficult to get it into Fear View, so I wasn't able to.
Right.
But yeah, if it works, I try and get it in there as my brilliant homage to Ralph.
So, and also a reason now to go and check Keith Eyles' YouTube page.
Obviously,
those little Easter eggs.
Obviously, yes. Yeah, I mean, I've realised, I've put 6 films on there, short films, which were done between 1999 and just a couple of years ago. The ones that I've done so far, and if you were to watch everything, all those films, they come to an hour. It's an hour of someone's time, but it makes me think, my God. all that work and all those years, and I've only created an hour of material. What the hell, So
But it's
I'll
all
be adding
quality.
to it. Well, I like to think quality, not quantity, but we'll see. We'll let other people be the judge of that, I think.
Anyway, but that leads us quite nicely into what we're going to talk about tonight, and that's kind of reminiscing about our days in the trenches when we were working on like our low budget films, which I consider to be my proper education in the film industry, in the
Wow.
film business.
We do loads of reminiscing, don't we? I like this.
We do. Well, with these extras, we get to talk about ourselves and what our experience has been like working within this industry that we love and sometimes hate, but mostly love. Yes, so 98, I came out of Panico, and I walked straight into a production that was crewing. And so I was very fresh faced, and what happened was we had done an exercise where we had worked as crew on other people's little scenes and then directed the scene ourselves. We did this for a whole day. We had a professional DOP, but everybody else would take up a member of the crew. And we were watching the rushes, and my tutor, Bob Doyle, said, "Watch this." And you see the microphone come in and then come back out again. And everybody laughed. He said, no, that is a really good sound recordist. That's a good boom operator there. Just happened to be me holding that boom. So I spoke to Bob about it, and he said, well, why don't you try being a sound recordist or go out as a boom operator and be a sound assistant and, get in that way. And so there was a job advertised looking for a boom operator, and I applied. And I remember the phone call. I was so, sort of nervous about making this phone call. It took me half an hour just to get the courage to ring this number and talk to the producer. And she was lovely. And she was very happy for me to come on board. I told her up front that I had no experience, that I'd only just come out of doing Panico, which wasn't even a film school. It was just like a crash course in filmmaking. But she was very happy to have me on board. And then, of course, I realized why she was happy to have me on board, because it wasn't going to cost her anything to have me there. If anything, that was the first film where I realized you got to get your expenses. This woman did not pay a penny for travel expenses. At the time, I had a car, and so it would always cost me petrol to sort of travel. And I have to say that first short was a trial by fire. I had a really tough time on it, and what it came down to was that the DOP on there. He comes off commercials, and he was used to having a lot of time to light stuff. So we were in these locations and he was taking forever to light it. And then suddenly we had to shoot it because we're going to be kicked out in 5 minutes. And so, of course, then I'd had to rush in and do the booming, and of course, no experience. And you have to do it straight away. And of course, the problem is, as soon as you put a boom in, you're having to watch for shadows. You're having to watch for, you're always asking for a sight line. Edge of frame. Edge of frame is always the thing you're asking for, because you want to know how far you can dip that boom mic in before it's into the shot. Because if it gets into the shot, you hear cut, and you have to start again. As I say, it was a pressure cooker of a shoot. And so, and also we were doing long takes, and my arms were killing me, because you got to remember that there's a lot of, you have to sort of rehearse and try and get in the position, especially if people are moving around. You have to sort of move the boom as well. And so you've got your arms up in the air doing all this rehearsing, and then suddenly you're into the take and you've got to do it for real. And I think the shot was maybe a minute or two, but it felt forever. It felt so long doing it, and my arms started shaking because it just the length of this boom, and I wasn't holding it properly, and things that you learn later on from having to do it other times when you don't have this pressure. But when you're under pressure, fuck me, you can't. It's so hard to do anything. And of
Absolutely.
course, me and this DOP had a falling out when it came to this one shot. I think this was like the second or third day on the shoot. We were in this boxing club on Harrow Road. It's a church that's been converted into a boxing club, and we've only got a certain amount of time in there. And of course, we're already behind schedule, and they want to do this Steadicam shot following the main characters into this room and walking around and stuff. No radio mics. We're having to boom it. Of course, everywhere we went, because there was me and there was another boom operator that they had for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And he'd come in as well to sort of help out. Because I think already they didn't like what I was doing. Because, yeah, he ended up shouting at me because we couldn't go anywhere when we weren't in shot.
Yeah.
Literally, this Steadicam shot was a 360 degrees shot, and there was no hiding. And of course, it was my fault. Everything was my fault because they were behind schedule and they couldn't get the shot done because I was in the way. And it had nothing to do with this DOP. And it was my first lesson that if you're at the bottom rung of the crew, you're the fuck up, not anybody else. You, because they can get rid of you. Can't get rid of the DOP. They can get rid of you. So yeah, I actually got fired.
Wow.
Yeah, I got fired from that one, and
I mean, it is a very hierarchical system. A film set, and as I say as I used to when I was teaching, explain that even though the technology and if you like the way we capture things and whatever has changed, the actual process, whether it be film, television, or video production, and the way it runs is essentially the same as it's been for over 100 years now. It's a process that works. It's a best practice, and you're absolutely right. It's in some respects quite antiquated and quite sort of militant in its structure. But yeah,
I mean it can be. I mean, back in '98, everything was being shot on film. It was either 16mm or 35mm.
Yeah.
Because mini DV hadn't come along, and people weren't really filming on Betacam. So you're either shooting 35 or 16, and a lot of these shoots were like film schools. So they've already paid the money for this stuff, and so yeah, you had to have that rigid hierarchy because that was just the way shooting with film works. Because you have the DOP, who also can be a camera operator, or there's a camera operator. You have to have a focus puller, and you have to have a clapper loader, because there's so much they have to do around those cameras because they're big, they're modular, they have lots of kit that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Which, when you're shooting mini DV, you just have the camera and some tapes and off you go. I remember working on some short films where a DOP who had only worked on film suddenly was given a mini DV camera to shoot on, and they were perplexed by these tapes. I remember seeing one. She was looking at how she was trying to take the back off and trying to sort of see if she could weave the tape around the heads.
Excellent.
Because that's what they do with film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so funny to sort of see that change, because I got it. Because, VHS, it was literally like shooting with mini versions of VHS. So it was funny to watch some of these guys who came off film doing mini DV, and suddenly it's like, because there's no way I could have been a camera operator if it wasn't for sort of being able to shoot on mini DV and other sort of tape formats, because you had to work your way up to that. You had to be the clapper loader. you had to had spent time loading mags of film, and then you had to become the focus puller, and the guy with the massive bag full of tapes and kits and and measuring tapes and pens and all kinds of stuff, just so you can get your marks on the for the follow focus and all that stuff. And you had to be really technically minded, because if it broke down, you had to sort of be able to fix the camera on the go. And then from that, you would then go to be a camera operator or DOP. But with mini DV, you become a DOP straight away. You didn't have to go through all those steps.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one of the problems. It shouldn't be a problem, I suppose, but I look at it as a problem sometimes out there with obviously the generation we've got now are the digital video generation, and you do get some people that'll market themselves as a DOP, when really they're more of a sort of cameraman type person.
Yeah.
To me, a DOP is absolutely somebody that understands cinematographers, somebody that understands lighting, understands color temperatures, refraction, absorption, all of that sort of thing, as well as ratios and rules of thirds and lenses and all that stuff. So it's kind of, it's kind of, sometimes difficult to find the old school, unless you're going really high end professional, movies or whatever. But to find the real sort of old school filmmakers that understand, all of that when it comes to lighting and exposure and those sort of things. Whereas a lot of people are more technical and more of a sort of camera operator, digital videographer, which is there's a lot of the same principles, but it is also slightly different, because we're not talking about a chemical process. And it's kind of, I'm not saying that's necessarily a problem. I'm just saying that I've noticed a sort of change in attitude, I suppose, regarding that.
Yes and no. I mean, I listened to a podcast where it was BAFTA interviewing Dick Pope.
Oh, fabulous!
Who is Mike Lee's cinematographer, and he learned on the job. He used to do documentary shoots,
right?
And so he had to learn lighting on the fly. He didn't have the time or money to have a crew with him. He literally had to do it himself. So that's the way he learned.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily true. There are, yes, you can go to a film school and you can learn all that stuff, but does that make you any better than somebody who learned it on the job and can do it by eye?
Yeah, not at all. I mean,
not having to think about any sort of mathematical equations, or how the light bounces. They put the lights and they find what works for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I have always maintained, and this is as someone who did go to film school, but I've always maintained that that's not the be all and end all at all. In fact, it's one of those industries where your qualifications don't really mean, they're almost not worth the paper they're written on. It is the experience and the credentials and what you've gone out there and actually done, and how creative you are as a person or whatever that counts. So I absolutely agree with that. It's not the film schools are a great way to sort of learn the nuts and bolts and learn things about the craft and learn some of the technical aspects and things of that nature. But I agree, there's so much to be said for actually going out there and doing it, and learning on the job and experimenting with things as well. So absolutely.
Yourself, it's about people, because coming off that first short film, I went into another short film working with a first AD called Chris Fry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after the experience of being fired as a boom operator, I thought, well, the next one, I'm just going to go on as a runner. I'm not going to put myself in that position again, because I don't feel like I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably the best decision I ever made, because I met Chris Fry on a short film called Grandpa, which did quite well. It was by a director called Andy Shelley, who he did a film later on called Tails, about people who actually have tails. And he was also like a music supervisor on a lot of films. I can't remember off the top of my head what films they were, but they're very well-known films. And so that was a really good experience. And I remember we were shooting in a studio. So the first day was prep, and then 2 days in the studio shooting, and then we had 2 nights of filming near what's the tunnel?
Dartford.
No, not that far afield. Not Limehouse. What's the other tunnel there?
I don't know, but carry on.
Anyway. Rotherhide Tunnel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were filming at this place that was I used to be in like an old power station and stuff. They used it for parties. The people who owned it, they were like some rich kids who said, yeah, we had like this party here and this after show and everything. And it was like a real dump. It was a lot like what Battersea was.
Right, yeah.
And they were filming the exterior of the house because a fire takes place. And I got to work with this old boy called Roger, who was their fire expert. And of course, Roger had worked on all the Indiana Jones films.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he was like a really old boy, full of stories, lovely bloke. And he actually let me sort of turn some of the flames on, which I wouldn't have let me do.
That's cool.
You know, but yeah, it was really great fun to meet him. And so, yeah, after that, I sort of, Chris Fly always had me on as his runner. And that way I met a lot more people, and I sort of did a lot of running until I started sort of camera assisting. I actually became a clapper loader. And how I learned this was I went down to Panavision, and you could just go in there and say, right, I want to learn how to load this camera. And they'll give you a mag and roll a film, and they show you, and they let you, do it to your heart's delight. You're in a corner somewhere, and you're looking around as well, going, fucking hell, I'm in Panavision. And you see all these photographs on the walls, these black and white prints, all these film sets and directors and kit. You're going, one day that's going to be me. Because I always wanted to be a director. All this was leading up to me directing my first short film, and I just wanted to learn on the job. I think I heard somewhere that Spielberg said that it was for a director should know what every job is on the set.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
I believe it was Spielberg who said that, and I that's what I went out to do. And as being a runner, you could do that. And after making my my first short film, I continued to sort of do that for a little while, but it did get to a point where I had to stop. And the problem for me was that I started turning up on set with a director's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked on this film that was in an old mental asylum out in Hertfordshire. The creepiest place I've ever been. And I was sort of helping out with the lighting, and also I was the grip, because I'd worked on a short for the National Film and Television School, where a friend of mine was on it, and he was the grip, and I helped him sort of set up this dolly track and it all leveled and everything, and so somebody had heard I'd done that and asked me to do it on this film, which I was quite happy to do. But all the time I was there, I just kept thinking, why are we here? Why are we not in London? Why are we only using this bit of the building when we had this amazing building and we could use, my director's head was on, and it was just, I just couldn't be on a film set like that. You don't need somebody like that on a film set. I wasn't going up to the director and saying this stuff. because I had learnt by that point that you don't.
Yeah, you knew set etiquette, which is very
Yeah,
important.
yeah, but I mean, I was the guy who would go up to director and say, "Oh, I just seen this great shot. Look at this mirror. See, you could get a shot of him coming through and just reflected on this mirror. It'd be great." And they just look at you, and the good ones say, "Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea." And never use it, and other people go, "What the fuck are you doing? Go back to your job."
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, but I had done that. I'd been that guy, but I've been on set where I've seen other directors have to handle with that, and I've actually sort of gone in and say, look, they've got a vision, they know what they've got an idea of what they're doing, so just let them be, let them do it. You have these great ideas, save them for your film, because you when you're doing your film, you'll appreciate that that you're doing it and not having to listen to other people's opinions when it's not needed.
Yeah, well, you definitely, I mean, you
Yeah.
definitely can't have that on a film set, and that's what I've noticed. Again, a lot of more inexperienced people, they you turn up on set and it turns into a committee, and you can't, and you like,
Oh
you
yes.
can't have
Or
this.
a
It's
debate.
like, not how it's just not how it works. It's not how you do it. And yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying.
So once you finished your film course, what did you do after then?
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I sort of listen back is as I'm trying to make sure I'm not sort of being repetitive in terms of what I've done and what happened. I mean, I talked about obviously the Valencia film program that I was part of, and sort of how Ralph used to run that. What actually happened was, as a sort of precursor to doing that course, you had to do a year of theatre production first,
Okay.
simply because they felt that even though it's like a sort of distant cousin or whatever to film, whereas TV is like a sort of close younger sibling or whatever. There are still a lot of practices that sort of cross over. So I had to get involved on a technical and a behind the scenes um, side of things on quite a few theatre productions. And one of the things that the college had that was very good was it did have its own performing arts centre. And I actually, I worked there part time as well, because it was a way of earning some money legally, because you could work on campus. It was just outside of campus that I wasn't allowed to work under the student visa that I was on. So,
Oh, okay.
so I got quite a bit of experience. And it was only things just like, obviously it's different, but it was like lighting and sound, and building sets, and those sort of things, sort of what they called technical theatre production. And while you were doing that, you also had classes that would be like sort of intro to film, where you just sort of look at film, and look at film history and genre, and discuss how films are made and things of that nature, which sort of got you ready for the film program, which was obviously, you had sound class, you had lighting grip class, you had camera class, etc., etc. And essentially then you made up crews on productions that came in. And I think I explained how that worked in the last one. But what I also did in my first year there, um, when I was in the theatre program, or the theatre year of it, I did volunteer to be a runner on the second year film program. So I would just go as a volunteer, and work as a runner on productions that they were doing. And also I got involved with the University of Central Florida. This is where the Blair Witch guys were, at working on some of their films as well. So in the first year I got quite a bit of on-set experience to sort of see how a set ran, who did what, and what the various jobs were, so that by the time the film program came, I'd already clocked quite a lot of film hours, if you like.
I have to say, I had the same experience as you, because my first year working in the industry was a load of student shoots, and I did it for all the sort of the big film schools in London. So I did the London Film School, I did the National Film and Television School, which
Yeah.
I personally thought was much better than the London Film School, and a few of the colleges and stuff.
Well, they shoot on film, don't they?
They all shot on film. That wasn't the problem. I think for me, the differences were their approach to it. So with the National Film and Television School, you were treated a lot better. Actually catering, actually proper catering. While
Yeah.
London Film School, you got sandwiches. I mean, I actually developed a love for peanut butter off quite a few of these London Film School shoots that I was on, because the only thing they had on offer was, mangy sandwiches that they got from a Pret a Manger. I mean, just really did not know how to treat people properly.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, and those and the other difference was, on the London Film School ones, you got a lot of that committee discussing stuff there on the set, wasting time, while the National Film and Television School ones, they were to the point, they got things done, and the experience was a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, I learned so much within that first year just running, and I feel that's a lot of people are missing out on that now, because instead of, it's like, spending a year running on other people's film sets, they jump straight in, they become a director or a camera operator, and they don't work on other people's shoots. So they have no idea what it feels like to be a crew member, for one, and what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So for me personally, trying to get a runner these days is so hard.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, what I found was, by the time I came into the film program, I mean, throughout that time, apart from hair, makeup, and wardrobe, I worked on every department on the film set at least once. Yeah, whether it be a feature or a short film, and did pretty much every job within that department at least once. So, from a sound perspective, I as you, this is why I was sort of feeling your pain in your story earlier. Yes, I've indeed been a boom operator. I've been a sound recordist. I've done dolly grip. I've worked on the lighting teams. In camera, I've loaded and clapped. God knows how many times. I've focus pulled a little bit. It's kind of quite a scary and skilled job to do that.
It is
not something I've ever felt particularly comfortable with, and I even operated a couple of times.
Well, this is the other thing people don't know, because they haven't done with film, is how scary those kind of jobs were. Because if you fucked up,
oh yeah,
it was a massive expense. Because if you fuck up on a digital shoot, you just go again. But if you fuck up on film, that's film gone through the gate. That's money gone through the gate. That's been wasted.
And also, you don't even notice till the next day, because obviously, when you film something, it has to get shipped off and processed, and you don't know right away whether it was in focus or not, unless you've got an operator who's really on his game and is great.
That's
through
right.
the eyepiece.
And this is why it was very easy to get focus pullers for student shoots, because the wisdom was that if you fucked up on a student shoot, nobody's going to see it. If you fuck up on a feature film or a TV show or anything like that, you're fired.
Yeah.
And you get a bad reputation. And that's what you live by, is by your reputation. So that's why it used to be very easy to get these technical people to come and do student shoots, because it's where they came to practice. Student shoots is where clapper loaders would go to be focus pullers, because they knew if they fucked up, nobody see it, because a lot of these films never got finished. I mean, I'm looking at my CV now, and I think I might, at that first year, I only saw a handful of the films actually finished. A lot of them never saw. I don't know if they were finished or not.
Yeah, don't get me started. There's hundreds of film productions that never came out of the can in some cases, and you think, what the fuck, So I hear you on that one. I mean, one of the things that really annoys me, when I see people on set nowadays, again, it's a simple thing, but it's very important to get right, is people aren't shown and don't know how to board properly. You know what I mean? And it's like, it really, it's almost like they don't really understand what the job is. And that always winds me up slightly. I guess with video and stuff, it's less taught now, but very important job.
It's more important now than it ever was, because uh, it's this weird thing that's happened, because when mini DV came along, sound was being recorded into the camera, so you had sync sound, so you didn't really need a clapperboard. But now we have these digital SLRs.
Yeah, you're back to old school slating. Yeah,
You are, because it's. I feel like it's like working with film again.
it is. Yeah,
Especially the fact that you're using sort of having like lots of lenses and different batteries, and you're having to change the card out every 15 minutes, which is about the running time of a big MAGA film.
yeah. I think actually we talked about this when you interviewed me for Driven Insane when we first met, and absolutely, we discussed that, and I agree entirely. It's almost like now a a card that you capture onto has sort of replaced a film reel, as it were, but it's sort of a very similar process. Only you've got a DIT now instead of a clapper loader as such. But in terms
Yeah,
of the discipline, it's very similar. Yeah.
it's very important. I remember what happened on the Clive's film, where one of the cards wasn't, exported onto the computer, and we lost that footage.
Oh dear. Yes.
Yeah, and
Heartbreaking.
it was. We had to go back and reshoot it,
Yeah, and it's never
and
quite the same, is
yeah,
it? It's never quite the same. This is the thing.
no, but you watching the film, you never know.
No,
You
no, no.
never
I
know.
think the film's
So
fantastic.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
been lucky
We're
enough to
talking
see it
about Out
recently.
of Hours, which
Yes.
I won an award for cinematography, which I always find quite amusing, because I used natural lighting for that film. I used the lighting that was there, and so I think a lot of the other people who were up for it, they actually had lit their film. So
Well, if the people
yeah,
thought it, I mean, at the end of the day, it's
yeah,
it's it's it's
it's
like
what
everything.
people
It's
think.
not supposed to be noticed. It's supposed to just work, isn't
Yeah,
it? So,
yeah,
y- you know, but I mean, back to the sort of experience on set. The thing that I tended to get picked for the most, and I don't know whether this was because I was the Brit or what, but I had a lot of experience working, both on shorts and features as a first AD. It seemed that you, you, you know my personality, as it was kind of suited to sort of getting things done and trying to be as productive as possible, in people management and things of that nature. So I did quite a bit of firsting. I actually did first for a feature film before even starting the film program, which was shot by the guys at University of Florida, and it was called. It was originally called The Falkland Man, but I think
right,
it may have been released under a different title. But it was a feature that we'd originally shot a trailer for it using old 35 mil short ends that
okay.
were left over, and they did the whole let's film a trailer and use the trailer to get the finance to make the feature. And of course,
I think people don't know what short ends are.
oh, sorry. Bits that are left over of the end of a reel of film that aren't necessarily, a magazine might get changed before you get to the very end. So therefore, there's a short piece of unexposed film, and often I used to get things made that way by sort of beg, stealing, and borrowing short ends that were still in the fridge, and using them. And you may only be able to get like sort of one take or about half a minute of footage, but often, especially if you use shooting a trailer or something, it was often a effective and efficient way to get film, which obviously was a very expensive medium at the time.
Yeah,
to
you
make
used to
something.
be able to go to advertising companies and production companies and just ring it up and say, "Do you have any short
Yeah,
ends?" And they would more than likely just let you have it for free because they were just taking up space in their fridges.
exactly. For a lot of people, it was worthless, So, but for a student, it was gold.
Exactly. There was so many short films, and I think I'm right in saying that I think there was a feature film that was shot entirely on short
Oh,
ends.
it wouldn't surprise me. Would not
Yeah,
surprise me. Yeah,
what it was, I don't know, but I do remember there's a story going around at the time that's a low budget feature had been shot just using short ends. So,
yeah.
yes, that's what short ends are, and you couldn't get that today.
No, sadly, but I mean, just buying the film at the time was very costly. Let alone the process of getting it, chemically, processed and color timed and transferred to tape or whatever. It was a very, very long-winded, but also a costly process. So yeah, so essentially, we did that, and um, it was a project that I got brought onto by one of the guys in the class who was quite enterprising and fancied himself as a producer and was actually sort of quite good at getting stuff done. And he originally sort of invited me to come and help on the film or on the trailer. And what happened was, this was my first witness of this. An AD that threw a tantrum and got in a big argument and walked off set, and they
Yeah,
needed somebody to basically take over. And I got asked very nicely by the producer, Keith, would you mind, taking the bull by the horns, as it were, and giving this a go? And I knew basically that my job was to communicate things, but get us on track and make sure the director had what he needed to get what he had to get done within the time scale and the limitations that we had. And I kind of stepped into it, and I found it wasn't what I wanted to do by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time I found that it was a very good position to learn what went on and to work with the director and the actors and the DOP and the sound guy and everybody involved in this process that all has to sort of work together to create this movie magic. So stressful as it was really good.
this is the thing,
Yes.
Keith. There is a misconception about what a first AD does. Now, what happened to me is I went up for a feature film once to direct, and I didn't get it. I think they actually made a very sound choice. They went with a guy who had an effects background to be their director because they had a lot of effects but not much money.
Okay.
So that wise choice. Okay. But they turn around to me and they say, "Could you be the first AD?" And I laughed. And the reason why I laughed is because I'm a director doesn't mean I'm a first AD.
Not at all. Yeah.
People have no idea what a first AD is. A first AD is, I would say, he is
Or she.
or she, they,
They.
they're the foreman of the set.
Definitely.
They're the people who make sure that it starts on time, it finishes on time, that everything's in the correct position that it should be. If there's got to be props there, they're there. If there's costumes, it's got to be there. That that everybody's up and running. That makeup is not taking too much time. That the actors are prepared and on set, and it's all about management of the set
Yeah.
and making sure that everything is running like clockwork.
Absolutely. You are the hub of the production on set, and you are absolutely the communicator, between the creatives and the artists and the crew. And yeah, you are absolutely there to try and orchestrate as best as possible this chaos, and make it work, and more importantly, make sure that things run on time. as well. And you do have to, it's a tough job. You have to sort of rule the set with an iron fist to a certain extent, because you are responsible for keeping it on time. It's not, sadly, it's not a creative position. It is a people management position more than anything. And as I said, I definitely wouldn't want to do it as a living, but I did it quite often. And good and bad experiences doing it. But I learned an incredible amount about filmmaking from adopting that position, and trying to do it properly. And I was very lucky, because at the time that I was brought into this production for the feature that they did, um, some of them were working on From the Earth to the Moon, which was being shot at
Okay.
MGM
That was
Studios.
the Tom Hanks miniseries.
It's the Tom Hanks produced miniseries, yeah, that was sort of well, it sort of followed on from, obviously they'd done Apollo 13 and whatever, and this was kind of late 90s, and it was a mini series for HBO that kind of almost like sort of started that sort of trend of quality HBO programming, which obviously continues to this day. Um, but I was lucky enough, because some of them worked on that, and they managed to get me on set for a day to shadow not only the director, who was Jonathan Mustow, who had
Oh
done
wow.
Breakdown at the time, and was producing the game, and obviously then went on to do U571 and Terminator: Rise of the Machines, and so on and so forth. And so I got to sort of hang out and sit with him, but I also got to see how the first AD on that controlled the set, and how the various crews and the DOP and everybody worked together. So I mean, I only did it for about a week, but it was a very valuable experience for me to be fortunate enough to be in that position and be allowed on set, and to basically chat. And it was weird, because I was a massive fan of Breakdown at the time, so of course I was quite geeked out to be sat in the chair next to Jonathan Mustow, and getting to chat with him and whatever. So it's pretty cool. And then of course, there were some well-known actors in that as well. So yeah, I got a bit of experience on a big production there, and sort of got to
Can I
see how that
ask,
worked. Yes, you may.
um, what was the first AD like on that set?
Well, um, it was interesting, because my memory of that was the first AD was a little bit of a shouter, particularly
Ah,
that particular week. And in fact, it's terrible. I should look it up. I guess I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but uh, yeah, he wasn't. I mean, it was, he got the job done, and it was done well, but I had since been on other sets, like, for example, I mentioned working with David Nutter on Disturbing Behavior, and on that set, it was much more of a well-oiled machine, and it was much calmer. And and I've done both ends of the spectrum in my own work. I mean, it took me. I was fairly chilled and laid back on a lot of things, but it depended on the personality of the director. I mean, I worked with some directors that would just turn up and have absolutely no idea what they were doing, and it would make me, quite angry, frankly, because I'd think, you've got this wonderful opportunity to direct. I'm very jealous that that they're doing that. I was quite envious, but at the same time, they didn't seem to have a fucking clue what they were doing, and they hadn't visited or recce'd the location. They hadn't come to set with a shot list or anything. And I was, like, very early on that shoot, saying, "Look, I'm here to help you, but I can't really help you unless you help me. I'll get these people working, but you have to sort of give me some idea of what you're looking to achieve, and not just fucking make it up as you go along, frankly." So I mean, the experiences, they were varied, and I guess my results as a first AD were varied, as well. But I don't regret any of it in terms of, there are times I think, oh God, I wouldn't act like that now, and I was a bit of a dick then, or whatever. But at the same time, it's all part of the learning process, and learning this unnatural process, which is filmmaking. It's crazy in many respects, but it's also magical, and that's why we love it.
Well, I just want to say I had my experience of first ADs, and they either seem to be very calm and collective, and even when faced with a situation like you were faced with, we're still able to deal with stuff without it becoming like a shouting match. And this is one of the things I loved about working with Chris Fly as a first AD, because he had that. He was always prepared. He was always very calm, collective, very fun to have on set, and he got things done. It was just a shame he had a bit of a hang up that he felt that people weren't respecting him because of his age. It just came down to this film we worked on. I was for this producer who made K2 and A Knight's Tale. His
All
son was
right.
making a film. It was horrible. I thought it was a terrible piece of shit, but there you go. And but the thing was that he came away from that experience seeing how people reacted to his father on set. Whenever he turned up, everybody was respectful and listened to what he said, and he felt he wasn't getting the same attention, so he dropped out of being a first AD. He said he wanted to come back to it when he was a bit older so that people would respect him more, but I felt people respected him already. It was just that shoot was just rich boy pretending to be a filmmaker.
Yep, I'm aware of them.
And he should have continued on, but he found a paying job working for ITV, doing all the graphics for Formula
Oh,
One.
fantastic.
And he's still doing it, and he gets to travel with them, and he does the all the graphics live. So I hope he's happy doing it. But he was great at first AD, and he first AD'd on my first short film, and it was just a pleasure to have him. But then I've worked with the guys who look like they're going to have a stroke.
Yeah.
That everything is just stressful. Everything.
Yeah.
Every simple thing. It's just such a big thing. And
yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, I worked with one guy, and he looked like he was going to keel over any second, because he had a vein in his forehead that just seemed to be pumping all the time.
Yeah.
It just used to be protruding out of his forehead and just pounding. And you go, bloody hell, he's going to have a stroke or a heart attack any second.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because, there's never enough time, there's never enough money, and it isn't an exact science. Filmmaking, it's very difficult, and you've got people have off days, and you've got egos and personalities and all sorts of things to deal with, and and you're there to serve a certain function, and sometimes if makeup are taking ages, you sometimes have to give them the hard news and say, look, sorry, but you've got like 5 minutes, and if it's not done, then we've got to go. So it's definitely not a job for everyone, and as I said, I wouldn't particularly want to do it again. However, I think it's made me a better filmmaker as a result of having done that job. And that thing you were saying, back to the sort of Spielberg quote or whatever, about understanding what everybody's role is on a film set. Being a first AD, you have to know what everybody's job is. It's imperative to what you're doing,
because you need to know if somebody says, oh well, this is going to take half an hour, that they actually know that it's going to take half an hour, and it's not bullshit.
I mean, everybody says less than it's going to take anyway. That's the frigging they're the opposite of Scotty on Star Trek. They do the opposite arithmetic or whatever. But it's never, I mean, it's not, filmmaking is not an easy thing at all. And
no, especially low budget filmmaking, because you really don't have much time.
Or resources, you have fewer people or whatever. But yeah,
I haven't done much in the way of first ADing. I nearly did on a trailer for a feature film that was trying to get made 2 years ago, but their camera assistant dropped out, and because I could do that, I sort of volunteered my services, and Clive Ashenden stepped in as first AD.
right.
But yeah, I did sort of micromanage him a little bit on that, and I shouldn't have done, but it was just because I'd been there at the meetings previously, and sort of I was all prepared for sort of my first ADing role, that Clive stepped in last minute to do it, and so I felt like I was helping him, and probably I wasn't, but I just felt the need to help.
It's difficult. You put 10 directors in a room to direct a scene, and you'll get a scene directed 10 different ways. I mean, that's the nature of it, and basically it has to be one person's vision, and that has to be respected. And the first AD's job is absolutely there to assist them in achieving that, whether or not you agree with what they're doing or not. It's completely irrelevant. Basically, it's you're just there to get it done, and the only sort of creative suggestions you can make are ones that are going to save you time more than anything. I have subtly said as a first AD before, which I don't know whether it's overstepping the mark or not, but I have sometimes questioned, do you actually need that shot? If we've been a bit behind time or whatever. And often directors have looked through their shot list if they have them, and they have. And I've done it as a director. I've thought to myself, you know what? I actually don't need that, or I can join this shot with this shot and it will save us time, or whatever, and you have to. I know as a filmmaker now, I very much have that frame of mind and mindset, and I'm mindful of it when I'm on set, which I actually think is a good thing.
I've been on the receiving end where I've had that advice and I followed it, and it turned out I did need that
well,
shot.
I mean, you've got to absolutely. You have to. At the end of the day, what the director says then is the bottom line. But yeah, I've certainly had more fun working, say, in the camera department or the grip department or whatever. But because it's a lot less pressure in terms of that sort of thing.
It is. I sort of before making my first short film, I was gravitating towards the camera department and the lighting department as well. So I was really on a path to be a DOP.
Right.
I really was, because I was with the camera department and the lighting guys, and I was sort of working within those two worlds, because they are different but the same at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but the thing for me was I hated the loading. Really hated the loading, because that is like one of the loneliest roles on the film set.
Yeah, it's true.
When everybody else is having lunch, you're usually changing reels.
Yeah, you're either in a bag or a dark room, one or the other. But yeah, no, I hear you, and again, if you're going to do it properly, there's quite a bit of paperwork involved with that as well.
Oh,
which,
yes, yeah,
which I was quite sort of meticulous about. But and again, I get annoyed when people aren't with that sort of thing. You think, if you're going to do the job, take it seriously and do it properly. But but hey ho, like I said, it's not perfect by any means. So yeah.
Well, I think that's a good point to end on.
Indeed.
Though I just want to sort of just say that it's be careful of how you treat people below you, because you never know where they're going to end
absolutely
up.
Absolutely.
And I say this because that DOP on the first short film, he applied for a role as DOP in my feature film. He clearly didn't know who I was. I remembered him. He didn't get that job.
Yeah, unfortunately, people remember the often remember the shit more than they do the good stuff. And yeah, you only have to sort of soil a patch once, and it can haunt you forever, can't it? So yeah,
it does. And well, I don't know if it affected this guy or not. End of the day, I don't care because, he treated me badly. And would I want to work with a guy who did that to me? No. So, just treat
Yeah.
people,
Treat yourself, and as well Ralph would say, and treat other people too. I mean, the thing is, we're all
that's
supposed to
it.
be doing this because we enjoy it and we love it and we're passionate about it. And it doesn't need to necessarily turn into a falling out stress fest, although that can
It
easily
can
happen.
be.
Yeah, it
It
can easily
can.
happen, particularly when you're talking about money and time and creativity and egos and things of that nature. It's definitely a bizarre beast, and a kind of an alternative lifestyle.
Well, I think for our next podcast extra, I'm going to get into a feature film that went really badly, uh, which I shall call The Ballad of Cold Fish.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I said I just need to make sure we do this fairly linear, and I don't end up frigging repeating myself. But I think we did okay on this, considering it's off the cuff. So yeah.
Yes, yes. So, Keith, how can people find your
Okay,
work?
if people want to see my work, there is a YouTube page, British Isles, EYLES, and it's kind of a little throwback to when I worked in the States. It was British Isles Productions because I was the Brit and my surname was Isles. So, it was the British Isles Productions, and it was a little in joke. So I've decided to use it as my moniker over here as well.
And also, there's a direct link to Keith's YouTube page in the description for this podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Right, you can find my work at independentrunnings.com, or if you search on YouTube for Independent Runnings, you'll find my work that way. Also, you'll find episodes of our podcast on there. So if you're not listening via iTunes, do check it out there. And we have a Twitter page, which is at Movie Heaven Hell, which you can follow us on there and find out. We always give hints to what our next director is going to be. And also we do stuff like the trailers from the films we talk about. And you can also see that same stuff on our Facebook page, which is Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And if you just search for that on Facebook and give us a like. So thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Simon.
Join us for our next episode, which will be F.
Oh,
Who could it be?
Who could it be? See you then.
Take care.